The Big Ten is not planning to have a Power Four opponent mandated for every Big Ten team coming into the next few seasons, or at least it's not even being talked about. Brett McMurphy, On3 reporter, you may have your opinions on him, that's fine, but he put out an article, and I'm going to see what Brett McMurphy had to say, and then also kind of look through some of the sourcing and stuff that he put out there. And we're going to talk through this because I have been an advocate of saying the Big Ten needs to mandate that every single team plays a Power Four team outside of their conference schedule. Every single one needs to do that. Now, not everybody agrees with that, and I get that, and we'll address some of those reasons, but I do want to talk about it all because I do think it's a very interesting conversation, and Brett McMurphy putting out this article kind of sparked all that. So let's see what Brett McMurphy has to say. He says, while Big 12, SEC, and ACC require 10 power opponents in 2026, Big 10 has no plans to do the same. Now, if you're not aware, the Big 12 has always played 9 conference schedule. I guess not. As far as back as I can remember, they've played 9 conference games, and they have required their teams, their schools, programs, whatever you want to call them, to play another Power Four at the time years ago, Power Five opponent outside of that. That was easier back in the day. Now it's a little bit more difficult, but it should be easier with the SEC and ACC doing the same. The SEC was the big news right before the season started that in 2026 they would go to 9 conference games. They just put out information about, the 3 teams that every single team will face and all that stuff. We're not going to get into that, but we are going to get into the Big Ten comparing to that and what they're doing. The ACC is weird. They have 17 teams because they can't actually count Notre Dame as a team. And so it doesn't work out for all of them to actually play 9 conference games. The math just doesn't work. So they're kind of getting a little tricky with it, but that's not anything for us to be concerned about. What they are doing is that they are requiring a Power Four out of conference opponent like everyone else. So all right, let's get into this. So Brett McMurphy puts out there, he says, starting next season, the Big 12, SEC, and ACC will require their respective schools to play a minimum of 10 power conference opponents. However, the Big Ten has no immediate plans to do the same, sources told On3. Okay, I have my thoughts on this. I've not been shy about my thoughts on this, but let's continue to read on, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts throughout. Past 2 seasons, Big 12 teams have been required to play a minimum of 10 games against power conference opponents. Past 2 seasons. All right, so the past 2 seasons, the Big 12 has required them to do that, and the Big 12 will do so next season as well. The SEC, and ACC announced they're going to do the same, essentially. Notes the mathematical issues. And then there's the Big Ten. So Brett McMurphy does not like the Big Ten. If you're not aware of this, he goes after the Big Ten. He can't stand the Big Ten. Doesn't care for the schools in the Big Ten. He's very much so against the Big Ten. And that's not a secret. And, whatever. Deal with, we deal with it. It is what it is. He says the Big Ten will play 9 conference games as it has every season since 2016, but isn't requiring its members to play a non-conference power conference opponent. So that's the SEC, ACC, Big 12. One Big Ten source says it hadn't been discussed. Another source added, there's nothing on the immediate horizon. And with nothing on the Big Ten's immediate horizon regarding playing the same number of power conference opponents as the other 3 leagues, don't expect any resolution on the 2026 college football playoff format. So what we're getting at here essentially is that the Big Ten, this is pretty obvious at this point, they want their automatic qualifiers, right? Tony Petit has come out and said this. The Big Ten coaches have talked about this is what they want. To me, it sounds like, from the way Brett McMurphy is reporting this, that this is almost the Big Ten wanting to see how this goes, right? They don't want to just react because the other conferences reacted and say, yeah, you got to play a Power Four opponent outside of your conference schedule. Now, for me personally, I hate that. I want Tony Petitti and the Big Ten to mandate that every single team play an out of conference Power Four opponent every single year. I think it's soft if you don't, and I think that you are putting at risk the Big Ten because you're not showcasing your skill and your team's ability outside of that. There are teams out there that are Power Four. If you don't, if you want to try to guarantee that you make bowl games and stuff like that, there are definitely teams out there that are Power Four that if you schedule them, you're going to be likely to play a bad team in the years going forward. Look at, now I know Minnesota just did it, but look at Cal. That didn't work out for them, unfortunately, because Cal got a star freshman. But I would say that Minnesota lost that game more than Cal won it. I think Minnesota lost that game when they were not running the ball very well. So that's really something you got to blame on yourself more than anything else. And I get it. The Cal quarterback was pretty good in that game too, and also Coy Parrish and some of those guys didn't have their best day ever. What I'm getting at here is saying that if you are a team that wants to try and work toward bowl eligibility because you're just not in that place, like UCLA is probably going to be like this in the next few years. Northwestern is typically like this. Minnesota has done this in years past. I don't know if they're doing it now. That Cal game turned out to be a better team than you would have thought, but it is something that teams try to do. The other thought process is, well, why do we have to play 10 power conference opponents when we've been playing 10, we've been playing 9 for years upon years upon years? And this is something that has not really gained traction until recently when Kirk Cignetti put it out there that we're just going to adopt SEC scheduling. And what he was getting at was that they were only going to play 9 power conference opponents. SEC fans, not all of them, but some of them have the inability to count and they don't understand, well, we do play an out of conference power 4 opponent. And it's like, okay, you do, but that only gives you 9 power conference opponents. And yeah, sometimes it's very difficult to reason with certain people. I won't even categorize them as a conference fan base. Just certain people. It's difficult to rationalize it with them. But I think he put the quote from Cignetti in here, if I'm not misremembering. Yeah. No, I don't think he put the quote in there. Yeah, he didn't put the quote in there. But essentially, Kirk Cignetti was saying that they wanted to adopt SEC scheduling because of the number of power conference games that they play, which to me made total sense. I wouldn't like it if I were a fan of Indiana, but I would get it and I would respect it because you're trying to make a point by doing that. And it also isn't something that looks like it's forever. Now you have the Big Ten essentially saying, well, we're not going to do it, even though you did it. I hate that. I think that the Big Ten should care about how strong of a conference they are perceived to be. I don't think that you should have your best teams in the conference not challenging themselves and out of conference. And you might ask, well, JR, how many teams in the conference are not going to challenge themselves without a conference games? Well, I'm glad you asked. Brett McMurphy pointed out here. He failed to be able to. No. Oh yeah, here it is. He failed to be able to count, but we'll give him give him a break for that one. He says this year 6 Big Ten teams did not play a non-conference power opponent. He's talking Penn State, Indiana, Washington, Rutgers, Northwestern, and Maryland. That's too many. You should not have a third of your conference not playing a power conference opponent, especially teams like Penn State and Washington, who are considered better teams in your conference. Now, next season, he says there's 5. There's actually 4, and he only lists 4 here. I don't know how he miscounted that. But next season, 5 Big Ten teams, actually 4, are currently not scheduled to play a non-conference opponent yet. And one thing that he fails to mention in here is Washington, who doesn't even have one of their out-of-conference opponents scheduled yet. Those 4 teams are Indiana, Nebraska, Penn State, and Washington. I understand Nebraska to a certain extent. You're trying to get back to bowl eligibility. You were having a hard time, but you did cancel that game with Tennessee, and things are on the up and up now. I understood that you canceled it back when the SEC was only playing 8 conference games. I didn't like that it was canceled, but I understood it more so, and wasn't ragging on Nebraska for it. However, I also understood why other fan bases and other people were ragging on him for it, because you want to see these big games, right? And really, at the end of the day, that's what this comes down to. We want to see really good teams play really good teams. And if Nebraska is going to be considered a really good team moving forward, I want to see them be challenged. I want to see them challenge the teams in the SEC like Tennessee, right? Penn State being another team. Penn State played Auburn for a couple years, and that was good, but Auburn kind of sucks, right? It's not a very good team. And this year they were ranked somehow because, SEC bias, but they never deserved to be ranked. They beat Baylor. Baylor is not a very good team. They have a really good quarterback that some people really love, but this is not a good team. This is not a team that you beat and you automatically get in the top 25. That should have never been the case. But anyway, I won't get too far into that. Anyway, but essentially, he's pointing out these four different teams. Indiana, I don't think Indiana is going to face a power conference opponent unless you make them do so. Nebraska should be doing that. Penn State should be doing that. And Washington, we'll see what they do. They still have the opportunity to do so. And that's one of the arguments that other Big Ten fans are making is, well, you can't just put this mandate in place now for 2026. Okay, I can buy that. I don't necessarily agree with it because, like I said, you still have a team like Washington who hasn't even scheduled an out-of-conference opponent yet in 2026, but I can understand it a little bit more. But why not mandate it for 2027, right? Why not come out and mandate it then? If there was information coming out that the Big Ten was highly encouraging their teams to go out and do a Power Four, Power Conference opponent, okay, I'd feel okay about that. I wouldn't like it. I'd still want more, but I'd feel okay about it. They're not even talking about it, according to Brett McMurphy here. And I get the other part of it too, of like, well, we've played 10 conference or 10 power conference opponents for years. Okay, who cares? I don't care that happened for years. I didn't like it when nobody else was playing 10 back then. The Big 12 eventually jumped on board, was appreciative of that. But I didn't like it when it was happening back then, and I don't like it now. Right? I don't want certain conferences to be playing a certain number of power conference games and others not doing so. At the end of the day, what this really comes down to is college football needs a scheduling committee, organization, whatever it is. Like, they need somebody who puts together the schedules for everybody in the country. So as much as I'm dogging on the Big Ten here and saying they need to do this, it's more so a college football administration issue that they need to be making sure everybody does this. And honestly, if it is for the automatic qualifiers, okay, sure. But I can only root for some of this behind the scenes, fighting and stuff like that for so long. At a certain point, I want to see big games. I want to see teams like Penn State go play LSU. I want to see teams like Nebraska go play Tennessee. Heck, I want to go see I want to see Indiana. I live in Bloomington. I would love to see Indiana come to. I don't live in Bloomington. I live near Bloomington. But anyway, I would love to see Indiana bring in Ole Miss, right? Have Ole Miss come to Indiana. Ole Miss, by the way, doesn't have a power out-of-conference opponent for next year yet either, but we'll see if that happens. I would love for that to happen, and I would go to that game, even though I try to cover the Big Ten and watch as many games as I possibly can. That would be a huge out-of-conference game. You may never see Ole Miss come up this far into the Midwest ever again, but to see them come to Indiana and do that, that would be awesome, right? And I can only say I get it so much. I get this, I get that. But at the end of the day, what are we fans for? What do we care about? Seeing big games. We don't care about saying, well, Indiana played Old Dominion, and Old Dominion's actually a better team than you think. While it's true, nobody wants to make that talking point. Nobody wants to say, well, actually, Old Dominion's better than you think. No, go play Ole Miss and beat Ole Miss, and then you don't have to have that talking point. You can say, yeah, we kicked Ole Miss's crap 63-10, like we kicked Illinois' crap. And guess who they're saying is not the bad team, or who is the bad team? Yeah, they're saying it about an SEC school and not a Big Ten school. So I know I'm kind of coming at Indiana there. They're just an example. I'm not trying to, single out Indiana. I like Indiana. But for the most part, I want to see the Big Ten play more of these big out-of-conference games. Right now, the SEC is feasting on some of the worst teams in college football from different power conferences out there. Actually, you know what? Let me just show it to you. Here, let's show it. All right, if you're listening on YouTube, you can see this here next to me. So this is a website called Top Dan. I like this website; they do a good job. But they show you basically the out of conference schedule for every single team. And right now, the SEC sits at 9-3 in college football. That looks pretty good, right? You feel pretty good about that. Well, let's look at the teams that they've played. Okay, so we go down here. Auburn beat Baylor. Baylor's not very good. LSU beat Clemson. Looked good at the time, but Clemson sucks. They're right now they're projected to be 5-7. They are not a good football team. Florida State beat Alabama. Don't hear very much about that. Everybody thinks Alabama's great still. Ohio State beats Texas. Don't hear very much about that because Arch Manning decided that the only person he could flex on was a Sam Houston State linebacker. Everybody just wants to talk about how Arch is still coming, or they just discount Arch and say, well, he's not very good, and Ohio State doesn't get all that much credit. Tennessee beat Syracuse. Syracuse might not even be a bowl team. South Carolina and Vanderbilt both beat Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is not going to be a bowl team, or is not going to be a bowl team. Oklahoma beat Michigan. Good win, but also that was Bryce Underwood's very first start on the road. He looked better against Nebraska. Didn't have the best stats in the world, but he looked better. But still, we'll make excuses. They got the win, but Mississippi State beat Arizona State. Arizona State, who lost their best player last year and somehow managed to still be highly ranked. Missouri beat Kansas. I know, Kansas is a nice little plucky program that can make some things happen. If the Big 12 is down, they could be a team that contends for it, but ultimately they're Kansas. And then finally, Alabama beats Wisconsin. Oh, and Miami beat Florida. No shocker there. Florida's not very good. But of course, if they go 8-4, some people think they should be in the playoffs. But and then, like I said, Alabama beats Wisconsin. Wisconsin, possibly the worst team in the Big. No, they're possibly bottom 3 team in the Big Ten. UCLA is the worst. So, I mean, there's one really good win here, Michigan, right? Well, one really good win for the Big Ten, Ohio State over Texas. So I don't know. You can look at the record and say 9-3, but the Big Ten could do the same thing here. The Big Ten could have Penn State face Clemson, and they could have Nebraska face Baylor, and they could have Oregon face Alabama, and have all the same wins here. But they don't because there's not enough power conference opponents at a conference right now. 6 different teams in the Big Ten didn't play a power conference opponent outside of the conference. 4 of them next year do not currently have one. I want to see that change. I want to see more big games. I want to see the Big Ten go out and prove themselves. And you know what? If you don't prove themselves, guess what? Go back to the drawing board and make it happen again, right? Go back, or not make it happen again, but go back to the drawing board and don't let it happen again. Put your money where your mouth is. Go actually care about your program. Go actually care about your conference and go beat the other conferences out there. So I would rather win by actually having competition than win by just being able to say it and speak it with our mouths. That's just me.